AP staffers, in general, as a general rule, are welcome to link to content from other news organizations for the most part. One thing to keep in mind is that an awful lot of news organizations are actually AP members and customers, and so that's, we're partners in a lot of ways. So that's fine. There are some exceptions, and well, one thing that we always ask people to be very careful of is they need to really think hard about the exact content that they're linking to and make sure that they're not going to end up sharing something that if we were to report it we would discover was not true. I mean, we want to make sure that we're only sharing the truth. But other than that, we generally are okay with reporters sharing content from other news organizations. Now, on election day and election night particularly, we have asked reporters, we've strongly discouraged our reporters from using the social networks to share the race calls of other news organizations. Now, the reason that we've done that is that race calling is something that we take extremely seriously at AP. We do it very, very well. I would say better than any news organization on the planet, and have a record that backs that up. And so we really want to make sure that we don't end up confusing people with a lot of information flying around that is not well attributed or that's confusing. We don't want to essentially give people the impression that the AP is making calls that it isn't making. And there's going to be an awful lot of noise on election night, and it's going to be a confusing time for a lot of people. So we want to just keep things nice and simple and straightforward. And trust me, as soon as we know that a race is decided and voting has been completed in that state, we'll make that call as soon as we're confident of doing it. If we haven't made a call, it's not because we haven't gotten around to it. It's because we have decided that it's not time to make that call, and we're not yet certain. And in fact, we may have decided that some of the other calls could be incorrect by other news organizations. Now, that's an operation that I'm not personally involved with, but I'm definitely aware of it, and we all respect the hard work that goes into that and the expertise and the attention to detail involved in calling those races. So we want to make sure that we get it right and that we communicate it well. In terms of some best practices about how we use Twitter in particular here at AP, a lot of it is tailored from one journalist to the next because of their particular needs, but there are some general rules that we ask people to follow. First of all, if anybody is, for example, if anybody is reporting out an exclusive story, we don't want them sharing details of that over social nets before that story has been published. Similarly, we want to make sure that nobody is sharing any kind of information that will ever put obviously any AP journalist in any kind of danger or put them at risk of being arrested, and the same goes for AP sources. And we're all over the world, including in a lot of very dicey places, so we have to make very careful decisions about what we share publicly in any way. But in terms of how journalists are using Twitter, what I always say is priority one is to learn to use it as a way to enhance your news gathering abilities. Use it to break stories, to find content you wouldn't already have your hands on, and use that to enhance your ability to report effectively. Exactly how that's done is going to vary from person to person, but we have a number of reporters who've gotten very good at using Twitter to develop sources, to get ideas for stories, and as I said, to find content that they themselves don't have, and it can be extremely effective. It's especially strong for a lot of beat reporters who can really get their finger on the pulse of all the people who are tweeting about the particular subject area. We also want to put our journalists out there as being the experts that they are on whatever it is that they cover. And this is something that I think at AP has sometimes been a challenge over the years because of the fact that we're mostly wholesalers of news. A lot of times people aren't even aware of the reporter behind the story or the photographer behind the picture or the video journalist behind the piece of video. But we're trying to change that a little bit, and we want our people to be known as being the experts that they are, and that in turn can obviously result in stories coming their way and story ideas coming their way. So we want that to happen too. But again, priority one is using social media as a news gathering tool, and also always remembering that it is just that, a tool. It's something that needs to be considered against all of the other reporting tools that are at our disposal, and used smartly and used in the appropriate situations. Well, one way I like to explain it, I think there are some people who have the mistaken impression that you need to use Twitter whenever you're reporting anything, and then there are other people who say you should only use Twitter if absolutely everything else fails. I think those are both fallacies. I think the real way to use Twitter as a reporter is to stop and think whenever you're doing any kind of reporting task and ask yourself, what's the best tool for the job? And if that happens to be Twitter, if it happens to be Facebook, if it happens to be Reddit, or who knows what it might happen to be, then great. If it happens to be, putting on your shoes and going outside and pounding on someone's door, then you should absolutely do that.